Go.
Hey, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Nick DeLay, and I have the pleasure of serving as chair of the Tompkins County Independent Redistricting Commission. I'd like to welcome everyone who is joining us by Zoom. Let's get started by asking our fearless Deputy Clerk of the Legislature, Brittany Grief, to call the roll.
Hank Delay.
Here.
Jeffrey True is not here yet. Carolyn Chang.
Here.
Chuck Nocera will be late. Elliot Emel. Here. Jan Vink.
Here.
Marsha Lynch. Here. Margaret Hobby. Here. Vivek Iyer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. First order of business is to look at our agenda, and let me just ask if anyone has recommendations for changes in the agenda. If not, welcome, Mr. Vice Chairman. First order of business on the agenda is the approval of minutes of our meeting of April 26th. I have a motion for their approval.
So
Moved by Marcia, seconded by John. Any discussion? Vice Chairman, are you cool with the minutes?
I am cool with the minutes.
All right. Glad to hear. All in favor of their adoption, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We will then move to the real substance of our meeting tonight. That is input from the public. But before we do that, I am going to call on our staff director, Greg Potter, who informs me that he has one particular adjustment to our map scenario 16V3-D for us to consider.
Thank you, Hank. After further review, Sven and I spent a little bit more time on the boundary for the Lansing area between districts 7 and 8 as proposed. And we are recommending that one small block be added to District 7 from District 8. And that is a block of a population of 28 people total. And the reason to do so is that it would shift the boundary all the way up to Asbury instead of a creek that's currently eliminating it. So it just makes it a little bit cleaner to do so. And we can show you that in detail on the map if you want to look at it, but it still presents a way to balance the districts. And we ran some numbers on a couple different scenarios, and Svetla is hovering over the section right now. If you go back to that, and her cursor is moving over that area that we proposed to add to District 7 from District 8. A minor tweak or an adjustment to make it a little bit smoother.
And the change that you're recommending, Greg, will have no adverse impact on our meeting the standard of deviation from the maximum population district to the least populous district.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, see that we're being joined by the distinguished county attorney, William Troy. Bill, thank you for being with us tonight. That's quite okay. The agenda now calls for input from legislators, municipal officials, and the public. Mr. Lynch, I understand that you're here and would like to address the commission.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chairman DeLay. Appreciate it. First thing I want to do is I want to thank the committee for a good process. You've been very, very thorough. You had a lot of different scenarios. You've evaluated them very carefully, and you've done this county a good service. And I thank you for what you've done.
Thank you.
I came here initially during your first meeting remotely, and said, well, in the ideal world, we in Enfield would like to have a district all to ourselves, not exclusively, because we'd never be able to have enough population to populate one full district, but we wanted to have one district that covered all of the town. Well, sometimes the perfect can be the enemy of the good. And it was an objective, we liked it, but we said, in the second alternative, please don't divide us into any more than 2 districts. I was worried, our town board was worried, that we might have 3 districts, maybe even 4 districts in Enfield, because sometimes we are like the middle child. Geographically, we are the middle child. We've got Ulysses to the north, we've got Newfield to the south, and we've got the town of Ithaca to the east, and Schuyler County to the west. So there's it's so easy to chop Enfield up into many parts. And the 16v3D scenario only chops it into 2. And it's pretty much the way it's been for the past decade. And we've lived with it well. We have 2 good legislators right now, Ann Corman to the north, Randy Brown to the south. And it's worked well. There's only a slight adjustment, and it's a reasonable adjustment, and it's a wise adjustment, and it's a clearly defined adjustment in that from east of Applegate Road and north of Boston Road out to Route 79, that part of the existing Randy Brown district will be moved into the Ann Corman district. And that's a fair way of doing it. It's probably the best way to do it to balance out the numbers. So this is darn near a perfect map that you've got. The only thing I can see as a disadvantage is, again, just like a decade ago, we have an even number of proposed legislators. So there's a possibility that we will get, like we have had for the chairman's vote a couple of years back, tie votes. But that's something we have to live with. I hope the county legislature accepts what you come up with. I think it's good. I think it's a keeper. And I think you ought to advance it to the legislature as soon as you can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. And thank you for coming out and speaking to the commission. We made a significant effort to have several public input sessions at the start of our process in order to encourage the public to come and make recommendations to the commission. You were among the very first to do so, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the input that you shared from your colleagues on the town board in the town of Enfield. So thank you. Let me just ask any of the members of the commission if they have any questions for Mr. Lynch, comments? No? Okay, well, thank you. Normally I would then turn and look to the people on a list of folks who have registered to speak with us tonight by Zoom. Brittany informs me that we don't have anybody who has chosen to do so. We do have, however, 3 emails that have come in to us, and let me just go through them quickly to get a sense. They're not very long. I have, first one is a message from Barbara Lynch, who says, I worry that District 1 is wide-ranging and heterogeneous, and that the African-American population residing in Ithaca may lack voice as a result. Okay. District 1 certainly is large in geography. It is lower in density than any of the other city districts. We have taken up the subject of whether the district in any way contribute to an adverse ability of the minority population to influence their elections, and determined that that is not the case. We have not artificially engaged in cracking, splitting the minority population in that district. So I think that deals with the concern that Ms. Lynch has raised with us. I have another message. This is from Tim Callahan. Let me read it. It's a little bit longer. Mr. Callahan writes, I'm retired and returned to New York, the state where I grew up. I live on South Hill. I propose 12 legislators and 4 districts with 3 legislators per district. This means more people in a district, about 22,000 versus about 7,000. Everyone in the larger district would have a say in electing all 3 legislators. To do this, they would use ranked choice voting. And he provides a URL link for an organization, Fair Vote, for how this would work and why. My experience with ranked choice voting to elect board members and councils is this. It increases both voter and candidate participation, raises ownership and confidence in elected governance groups, and this leads to a higher degree of collaborative action. Communities across the U.S. use ranked choice voting. Research shows that the main reasons people and missing a verb here. Main reasons people are concerned about an organization is not money, but their supervisor. Our supervisor is the Tompkins County Legislature. Also research small groups make better decisions more quickly than larger groups. This has been true in my experience. Thank you for reading. Thank you for all your hard work. It shows a high degree of dedication and professionalism. Signed, Tim. I have one more. This submission to our email site for Tompkins County Redistricting is from Kathleen Minix. Ms. Minix writes, I am pro any redistricting that brings full representation to all citizens, permanent and temporary, citizen and non-citizen to our community. I understand this may result in redrawn maps and more personnel. That's the end of her comment. So those are all of the comments that we have received on our proposed map scenario 16B.3-D. I should note that we have with us this evening a member of the Board of Elections, Steve DeWitt, here. Let me just ask Steve if he has any further comments that he'd like to share with us. Steve, thank you to you and Tamara Scott for your participation throughout this process. It has been most helpful to us and to our staff, and we thank you for that.
I don't have any additional comments. I made my comments at the last meeting, and I think the commission has done good work, and it's a good job.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And since he is here with us, I'll ask Mr. Troy, Tompkins County Attorney. Bill, if you have any comments that you'd like to share with the commission, now is a good time to do it.
No, though I do have a concern about when these changes would take effect, since we don't really have an election coming up for several years. Hank and I spoke about this briefly today, and we have to make some accommodation for that. I'm not prepared to speak to that right this instant, but I think this works quite well as I see it here.
Thank you. And then let me just turn to any of the other members of the commission, either those here in the county legislative chamber or on our Zoom screen. Ask if you have any comments or thoughts that you would like to share. Anyone? Yes, Jan.
More a question, I think. I like the idea of ranked voting, but I don't think we should take it up now, but I would like to know if it would have been possible.
What would have been possible?
Ranked choice
Creating
voting.
4 districts with 3 members in a district.
I cannot tell you off the top of my head. I mean, we just don't do it much in this country. That doesn't mean you can't do it. But I think I was taught in law school, if you want to test something, do it in somebody else's case, rather than your own. That's sound advice. I don't know. We'd have to take a look at it.
Well, probably the major example that has taken place in New York State is in New York City with the primary election that took place last year, leading to the selection of Mr. Adams.
I'm not saying we can't do it, but we'd have to be careful about it. We'd have to really teach people how to do it well, because I can see a lot of people being completely flummoxed by it.
And that, of course, would require an action by the county legislature outside the purview of this commission. Our charge really doesn't include that. So, anyone else? Carolyn from afar, or Vivek?
I was curious too about what it would entail. I mean, I think it's late in the game to take on something like ranked voting, but from what I've seen in other places, other countries, it can be really effective. So I was just curious, what would it take to make that possible? And I assume it's something that the legislature itself would have to enact.
Correct.
Right. It's likely there need to be a change in the charter to do so.
And that might include a referendum.
Yes.
Or would include a referendum. Yes, Steve.
I'm sure it would also require a law change in New York State, because you can't be running it'd be very difficult to run a county legislature race under ranked choice voting and run everything else under the current system. So I think you'd have to go, across all races. I think New York City's case is just for city offices. It's not for like state assembly races, or state senate races where it's congressional districts. So, it really would require a state law to really do it effectively.
Thank you.
The Cortland County Legislature currently uses weighted voting. And Katrina, our other deputy clerk, used to work in the Cortland County Legislature. And they had a spreadsheet tabulation at the bottom of each computer that they use to see if something passed or failed.
Yes, the weighted voting is very different from ranked choice voting, which takes place at the ballot box, not in the legislature itself. Okay. Any other comments from any members of the commission? If not, I'll turn to the next item on the agenda, which is future schedule. Future schedule would call for us to meet 2 weeks from now to review any changes that are necessary as a result of the input that we've received this evening. I would hope that at that meeting, we could actually come to conclusion with a vote in favor of the scenario 16V3-D as amended in the way that Greg Potter has described to us, adding a few in population between District 7 and District 8, added to 7 and taking away from 8. And with that modification, I would hope that we would then look at a narrative to accompany or to essentially be the final report to accompany the map that we would submit to the county legislature for its consideration by the Government Operations Committee and the full county legislature. Any comments on that agenda or suggested schedule?
Just going to add to that, Hank, we'll have prepared for you to review individual maps for each proposed district as well on a separate piece of paper, along hopefully with the meets and bounds descriptions, which have to go forward with the resolution. So we've done some preliminary work to get those done because Svetla is about to embark on a long vacation. So we wanted to make sure that she does her work before she leaves town.
Well, the taskmaster has indicated what Svetla's got to do. And once again, let me thank on behalf of the commission, Svetla and Greg for all the terrific work that they have done with us. I also want to express my appreciation from the city redistricting working group for the fact that both Greg and Svetla have sat in time to time on our meetings of the city group so that we could have the best possible coordination between development of city ward lines and legislative district lines. You've been just terrific throughout this entire process, and we thank you. Okay, unless anyone has anything else to add, I would welcome a motion to adjourn. Somebody would like to do that. Margaret moves. Second, Marcia. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.